Hello, my name is Jordan Hansen, and I'm here to talk to you about a man with many names, but known to most as Jack Kirby, the King of Comics. First, let's obtain a little background on the Jack Kirby. He was born Jacob Kurtzberg in Lower East Manhattan, New York City on August 28, 1917. He grew up poor and spent most of his days learning to draw by tracing characters in comic books and newspapers he found throughout the streets. This is where he found his passion to learn how to draw and to finally escape the neighborhood he was born into. With this passion, he sought out any place, person, or thing he could learn from about art, but ultimately self-taught himself everything he knows. He does acknowledge that there are a few people who served as influences to him, though, such as Milton Caniff, Hal Foster, and Alex Raymond. From an educational standpoint, Kirby did not have much, if any at all. He was rejected by the Educational Alliance because he drew too fast with charcoal. At least, that is what Kirby claims. He enrolled in Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, but because they were looking for candidates that would work for endlessly long hours on one project, and Kirby was more into getting things done and not sticking to one single project for very long, he left within a week of enrollment. This led him to seek out a job with whatever he could find. This brought him to the newspaper business, where he could make comic strips and pitch ideas to them. It also led him to movie animation, where he would work as an in-betweener, which is a person who fills in action between major movement frames. You can see some of his work in the Popeye cartoons. He soon partnered with Joe Simon, and together they took on the comic industry. Starting at Timely Comics, which would eventually become Marvel Comics, they created numerous characters including Captain America, the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, Manhunter, Boy Commandos, Hulk, and Marvel's first black superhero, Black Panther. Kirby eventually felt he was being mistreated unfairly at Marvel and turned to the rival National Comics, eventually to become DC Comics, where they could not figure out what to give Kirby and Simon to do, so they actually told them to do whatever they wanted. While at DC Comics, they again created a majority of the characters used for major roles in DC Comics universe. Kirby was drafted into the U.S. Army during World War II, but before that he was asked to create a year's worth of material for National Comics to use. This led him and Simon to hire inkers, editors, and more to create just that before they were drafted. Kirby found himself in Normandy just weeks after D-Day and was recognized by his commander as a comic book artist. This being the case, he was given the extremely dangerous job of scouting ahead and drawing reconnaissance maps of the nearby towns. Kirby eventually suffered severe frostbite on his lower extremities and almost lost his legs. Luckily, he recovered and was honorably discharged with a combat infantry badge and European, African, Middle Eastern theater ribbon with a bronze battle star. After the war, Kirby teamed up with Simon again, and together they opened their own comic publishing company called Mainline Publications. During this time, they were hitting it hard with their newly created version of the comics called Romance Comics. This had become popular with the arrival of romance novels, and they started off the romance comic series with their first comic called Young Romance. Later on, Kirby went back to Marvel and started working 12 to 14 hours a day at his table and creating 8 to 10 pages of artwork each day. It was towards this point that Kirby became the single most influential figure in the turnaround in Marvel's fortunes. With his different point of view and philosophy strengthening his pieces and others, he became the primer for nearly all of Marvel's comics. Stan Lee even established Kirby's work to be used as the one single master point of view for creating the Marvel look, making Kirby a role model for everyone to follow. Later on, Kirby went back to Marvel and started working 12 to 14 hours a day at his table and creating 8 to 10 pages of artwork each day. It was towards this point that Kirby became the single most influential figure in the turnaround in Marvel's fortunes. With his different point of view and philosophy strengthening his pieces and others, he became the primer for nearly all of Marvel's comics. Stan Lee even established Kirby's work to be used as the one single master point of view for creating the Marvel look, making Kirby a role model for everyone to follow. Again, though, Kirby moved back to DC Comics for being treated unfairly, and here he completed many of his desired series. As he worked with DC Comics, he became unhappy with them forcing him to work on characters and projects he never wanted to, which led to his return to Marvel once again for the last time. During his last time at Marvel, he created several more pieces, including the Eternals, a race of inscrutable alien giants, well, known as the Celestials, who are the behind-the-scenes intervention, which became a core element of Marvel today. He also created the Silver Surfer, the Ultimate Cosmic Experience, which was published in Marvel's Fireside book series and is considered Marvel's first graphic novel. Kirby eventually died of heart failure on February 6, 1994. Unfortunately, he was not truly appreciated for his work until after his death. After his death, he was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame and had an award and Hall of Fame named after him. To truly grasp how many artists he touched in the comic book medium, a piece in the New York Times sums it up in short. He created a new grammar of storytelling and cinematic style of motion. Once wooden characters cascaded from one frame to another, even from page to page, threatening to fall right out of the book into the reader's lap. The force of punches thrown was visibly and explosively evident. Even at rest, a Kirby character pulsed from tension and energy in a way that makes movie versions of the same character seem static by comparison. Kirby's work is truly a work of art that made the medium of comic books what it is today. Long live the King of Comics.